Hello, good evening and welcome. And as you can tell, you've got me on audio tonight. And I think it's probably sometimes easier on the stream if we do it this way rather than the having to rely on all that upload from the my very poor rural bandwidth. But anyway, nonetheless, audio or otherwise, I've got a really great guest. And so I'd like you to join me in welcoming Alison to the stream. So, Alison, you've been on the stream before. You're very welcome back.
Yeah. Thank you, David. And how are you doing on Parlay?
I'm doing very well. A big thank you to the 43,000, soon to be 44,000 people who follow me over there. So I'm surviving, Alison, my exile from Twitter. There is life on Twitter, you know, so I'm okay.
No, I know. Well, this is my third account that has been suspended, so I'm on my last go, I think. I can't swear at anyone anymore, put it that way.
Yeah, I think the fact is, Alison, that Twitter's not a place for free speech anymore, and so, you know, despite the massive pile-on that was orchestrated against me, I'm unbowed, not bothered, and you know, I will rise in, be it here on YouTube or on Facebook or on Rumble.
Yeah, you've been doing a great job on the Facebook group. Actually, you really have, because in the last week there's been loads of people who've joined. So, and that's all thanks to you.
Well, no. Well, thank you. And actually, folks, just so that you know, I mean, Alison is the founder of UK Lockdown Sceptics, which is a private Facebook group. But you're all very welcome to come over if you're not already on it, and join us
and be depressed with the rest of us.
yeah, it's basically a psychotherapy
yeah, it is
group that we've got going. Yeah, but it's a place for I think independent minded people. And actually, Alison, to be honest, I think throughout this whole mess, or whatever word you want to use, it's actually, I found a lot of comfort, because there's people, I see people like, for example, I see Joanna, who's come on the stream. She says, hi, Alison. You can see Joanna there.
Joanna. Oh, hi, yeah.
Lots of sane people keeping me sane. So I wanted to thank you for that, Alison, for actually creating the...
Honestly, David, it's nothing. I just set up a page, and the only reason I did it was because everyone was pissing me off. Members of my own family and friends were really... I was being unfriended and ignored because I took a different approach or different view, basically. And it was really annoying me. And it was when Toby Young set up his Lockdown Sceptics website, and I thought, well, this stuff is great if you're appealing to a highbrow audience, but you kind of need to appeal to some of the people on Facebook in order to try and get this message across. And initially, when I set it up, it was an open page. And so people were, you could see if you were posting onto the page. And then I made the massive mistake, because I'm not a Facebook expert, of closing the page and making it private. Some people appreciated that because it meant that other people couldn't see what they were posting on the page, but it also meant you couldn't share stuff. So from there, it kind of developed into, a self-help group.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
We all meet to get depressed.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the numbers, Alison, as you pointed out, I think yesterday, I mean, there's basically an army of people on the group. I think it's not far off 5,000 now. It's getting up for that, isn't it?
It is nearly 5,000. Yeah. The problem is if you're, it doesn't scroll through your feed anymore. So you need to click on it in order to find it, because I think we've had so many. Initially, I was doing all of the approvals so that because I could weed out any posts that I thought were going to fall foul of the Facebook fact checkers, if you can call them that, fact checkers. Or I've had too much whiskey already. And I don't know. I think that had an effect in that it kept it streaming through people's feeds. But then I kind of, after lockdown, I decided I needed a bit of a break, because it was quite hard work. Because we had about 30 to 40 posts a day. I was like, okay, I'm going to take a bit of a break. and I just left it open. And now my iPad just fills with these, fact check things telling me everything is false content. And if you have a look at if you look at the
Yeah,
false content and you click through, you can see that it's coming from the mainstream media now, whereas before it was random websites. And I
yeah,
was a bit cautious with those, and so I'd let a couple of them go on, but not all of them,
yeah.
just to try and keep it scrolling. But now I think you'll find that it's been completely buried by Facebook, and you will have to click on the page in order to find any posts.
Well, as I said to everybody listening, I mean, hopefully you are a member of the group. If you're not, then just go to look it up on Facebook, UK Lockdown Skeptics, and apply to join. And Alison or myself or the other moderators, I'm sure, will look favourably upon it. But it is important, Alison, that we do have a safe space for realists, because I mean, it's been a while since you've been on and we talked last, but I mean,
yeah, the last time we talked, David, I think we had Sweden weren't being taken seriously at all. I think it was early July.
Yeah, I know it's so mad, Alison. I mean, but back in July, let's think back then. We were sort of technically beginning to emerge sort of from Boris's 3-week, 21 days to flatten the curve, lasted for 3 months. Back in July, business was beginning to kind of open up again a bit. And the world seemed, well, maybe there's something the other side of this. Turns out that the thing at the end of the tunnel is another train coming at about 100 miles an hour, because we are now back to, as far as I can see, Alison, into something that looks like and smells like another lockdown. But in some ways, it's worse, actually. And I want to talk to you about that, because we have. Here in Northern Ireland, where I am talking to you from, yesterday, the devolved administration told us that we mustn't go to visit our families. So that would be penalised. So if you go,
or any family at all. So I'm trying to keep up with the news. So you're not allowed to go and visit anyone.
Yeah, well, so they tell us. Yeah.
Really?
And so apparently you cannot go and visit, for example, your kids, in my case, or my grandkid, can't go and visit them because, well, that's just too dangerous. But I could meet them all down the pub, and then it would be safe. So this is the kind of unexpurgated crap that's been coming out of Downing Street, Stormont, Holyrood, up in Holyrood, and Cardiff. And when does it become enough, Alison? When does this become so much that we just say enough?
March, David. It was back in March I'd had enough.
Yeah.
It's just insane. I mean, I find that really hard to believe, what you're telling me about. Is it Northern Ireland then?
Yeah, Northern Ireland and Scotland as well. In fact, actually, hang on, we've got Nick here who says, Alison, it's fine in England at the moment. I'll tell you what, Nick.
What's fine? No, there's nothing fine about having a prime minister tell you that he's going to use the military to enforce regulations which are derived from clown world. They make no sense. It's infuriating. I'm trying really hard not to swear now.
That's okay. That's all right. You're fine. I mean, but you're right. I mean, we have a prime minister who yesterday basically
around the goddamn bend. He's lost the plot, and he looks awful as well. He's got these big black things under his eyes, and he just looks terrible. Somebody just needs to pluck him out of this circle of scientists that he's got around him and just take him to one side and say, like, that's enough. Take a break, because he's totally lost the plot. And I can't believe it all comes down to being in hospital over COVID. I don't know. Maybe he was spirited away when he went into hospital. He's been replaced by a robot, because I don't know. I mean, I never voted for the guy. I didn't like him. So none of it is on me.
Yeah, well, I couldn't actually vote for the Conservatives here, so there's no DNA on my fingerprints either. But you're right, Alison. I mean, going back to March, that probably was a moment to have turned around and said no.
No, because the reason I say that is that there was a lot of evidence in January and February that this had all been in circulation around that time.
Yeah.
And then you had Vance and Whitty come on and tell us that, it wasn't a big deal, and, the majority of the population wouldn't be affected by it. And they seemed to be towing quite a decent line at that point. I thought, okay, it's a responsible approach to what may or may not be something pretty scary. But then thanks to people like Piers Morgan and in the media, and I hold the media in contempt because I really believe they had a major role to play in all of this.
Yep.
And because of the media, we ended up with this lockdown. And then they just dug themselves into a deeper and deeper hole. And to begin with, I think you can say that you could argue that they were doing the best they could and they were listening to the science. But then we've got Boris today saying we've gone from flatten the curve, to make, space in the NHS and all the rest of it, to we're not stopping any of this until we get a fucking vaccine. What is that all about? That's terrifying. Well, it is to me.
Yeah, I mean, I like this comment from Chris here on the stream. Whitty and Vance looked like they were in a hostage video. Yeah, good one, Chris.
I don't know who's holding who hostage, though, David. Seriously, I don't know. I think it's really frightening.
Yeah, I kind of think we're the people that are being held hostage.
Oh, yeah.
But but going back, because I wanted let's talk this one right through. So I agree. Back in February, Alison, I remember thinking that, well, we don't know what this is. Herd immunity seems a good plan. I'm happy with that, and that seemed to be the right route to be going. And there was a lot of unknowns about just how, just the nature of the virus and all of that. So I think reasonable people would have thought back then, herd immunity seems good. But then, of course, Professor Ferguson from Imperial College entered stage left with his 500,000 deaths bogeyman. And honestly, I think, Alison, from that point, we were screwed over, because that is what ushered in the let's flatten the curve, protect the NHS. But actually, you talk about the media. One of my problems is and I think you probably share this, the NHS. Since when is the purpose? Why the purpose of the NHS is to protect us, not the other way around?
Right. Yeah.
How did we end up in a world where people are being thrown, elderly people, vulnerable people were being chucked out?
Honestly, for a few years now, I've been really into the whole medical tyranny side of things because of what happened with my parents. So I've always kind of taken this view of I've never been exactly in awe of the medical profession, if I'm honest. And I think the writing was on the wall in this country when I don't know, do you remember the case of Aisha King, the young kid who had cancer, and his parents took him.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah,
they took him out of the hospital and headed over to Eastern Europe in order to get him treatment, which they'd researched quite thoroughly. And the NHS basically got the police on them. And I remember thinking that was really horrendous and very frightening. And the police got the Spanish police to arrest the parents. And I remember her being forced aggressively into the back of a police car. And I thought, this is incredible. And it's the NHS who have arranged this. They've got in touch with the government. The government's got in touch with Spain, and they've tracked these people down who were essentially on the run. And the father was making YouTube videos in order to explain their position. And that, thank you, it's proton beam therapy. He was looking for that in Eastern Europe, and I believe he got it. And as far as I'm aware, that child received that treatment and got better. So
yeah.
But the fact is, it was the British government and the NHS who decided to try and get this family and put them in prison, essentially. And I just thought that these are parents. It's up to the parents what treatment they want to look for their child. I couldn't believe it. And this was, I think, 5, maybe 6 years ago now. And since then, we've had other situations with Charlie Gard. So medical tyranny, for want of a better word, has been there all along with the NHS. And that's what happens when you get the state involved in anything.
Well, yeah, I agree, Alison. And for a long time, I've been very critical of the NHS. I remember writing an article calling it the National Death Service because
Yeah.
each year, I'm sure you people will be aware, there's around about 12,000 or so unnecessary deaths that occur in the NHS, which is like 3 times what happened on 9/11. But in the UK, I used to rant about this a lot, Alison, the fact that the NHS is being held up, like the fatted calf and the golden calf, and it mustn't be criticised. But what happened in March was it became the national religion, didn't it? I mean, go out and clap.
And
Yeah,
science has as well. Along at the same time, we've got this approach to science now that the scientists can't do anything wrong.
yeah,
And there's this expression, the science is settled. Since when?
exactly.
I've never understood that. And
Yeah,
so we're now looking at scientists and the medical profession like they're gods, almost, for want of a better word. And I think that we've got to this stage now where we need to get back to this point where we use reason. And there's such a huge body of evidence now that's coming out of the scientific community to explain COVID and put it in a different context and give us all this data. I mean, we could shove the data in a vault, but no one's listening.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the point about the science is settled is a good one because they use the same argument when it comes to environmental issues as well. And anyone with even a passing understanding of science understands, Alison, that it's always evolving. It's always being challenged. It's never settled. The science is never settled. And the other thing is, this government kept telling us back in March and April that they were following the science. But
Yeah, well, that was just an excuse, wasn't it? Because they
it
didn't
was,
have a fucking
yeah.
clue what they were doing.
No, no,
It's the only, they thought it was a get out of jail free card, basically. But
mm,
and I think it was slightly understandable at that point. You could kind of see why. But I don't know. Now I look at Matt Hancock and he looks like a man whose cheese has slid well and truly off his cracker. I mean, that bloke, honestly, he just needs to be removed. He's gone and
yeah.
he's completely overwhelmed and out of his depth. And so is Boris. I really don't know where we go from here.
But I mean, when I look at the Conservative government as a whole, I would share that criticism of all. I mean, where have any of them been? It's only, Alison, in the past few days that there does seem to be some sort of unrest on Conservative benches over the latest draconian announcements from Boris and the gang. But it's taken them a hell of a long time to waken up to the
Too
fact.
little, too late. I just
Yeah,
want them all gone. I want them all gone. I don't care
yeah,
how we do it. I just want them out. I've had it with them.
mm,
Honestly, it's tyranny. It's complete tyranny. And then
mm.
you've got people like Wandsworth Council. Did you see that tweet that came out yesterday from there?
No, I'm
Yeah.
banned. I don't see anything on
They were
Twitter.
telling everybody that there was going to be, if there was some massive, in order to prepare for some massive crisis, you should pack a bag and a medical kit and get ready to leave your house. And I'm thinking, what is this? Like nuclear war? It's, and then,
Mm,
but
mm.
actually, that's not a bad idea, I don't think. I've got my
Oh,
bag
well,
packed.
yeah. Well, I mean, this is the problem. I mean, we moved through those months, March, April, May, and then it seemed to ease off a bit in terms of the totalitarianism, but it didn't really. I think, Alison, they were faced with the fact that all respiratory diseases tend to vanish in the Northern Hemisphere summer. And that's exactly factually what happened with COVID-19 in the UK. The numbers have gone right down. Just before we came on air, I was checking the numbers, the average number of deaths in Scotland over the last couple of months. It's one a day. One person a day, Alison.
But
And
we've gone from this whole with that curve, and I'm not really very scientific, I don't think, but I could follow the curve that we were using to track what was going on with COVID. But
mm,
now it seems to have got very messy. We've got these R numbers. I haven't got a clue what's going on there, if I'm honest. And we've also got cases, but I don't really understand what's the definition of a case. Does anyone know?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, the thing is that they're actually, it would appear, mixing and matching different messages here. So when people talk about the R number, Alison, the R number essentially is a modeling number. It doesn't have medical. It has no anchor in medical science. It's just something that
Mm.
computer modelers use. To me, it's hugely problematic. And then, as you say, when we hear about, all of a sudden, it's been nothing but it's cases. Positive cases.
It's all cases. I think we just need to stop, and it's a hugely expensive program. We just need to stop this testing program completely. It just needs to be, the only people that need to be tested are people in hospitals and people in care homes. And it's actually the people in care homes I feel sorriest for, because you've had those people in care homes have had no visitors, no human contact now for 7 months. And what we're essentially saying is that should now carry on for another 6 months. I am sick to death of the government micromanaging our lives. It's up to people, individuals, whether or not they want to take risk. And it's up to families to decide the risks between themselves and the member of their family in a care home. But when you consider the fact that people going into care homes have 3 to 6 months, maybe a year to live, maybe a few more years, it depends. You can't lock them inside there and deprive them of any human contact. That's absolutely vile, really. But it should be really down to, we should be, as individuals, allowed to make the choice about what the risk is to ourselves and our families. And if other people are terrified, then that's up to them if they want to self-isolate. It shouldn't impact on my life, basically.
Well, we live in the strange world where the healthy are being asked to isolate.
Yeah, exactly. That's not the original meaning of the word quarantine. Was, like 40 days to isolate people who were sick, not the healthy.
You're right. And I think some people have raised questions about these positive cases. Or is there a difference between a positive case and a positive infection? So in other words, if someone's walking around, Alison, and they've got within them shards of COVID DNA or RNA, all that means is that sometime in the past 6 months, they may have had it, they were fully recovered, and they're healthy people. But those people appear, at any rate, to be being picked up, and that's being sold as, they're positive. Well, they are positive, but they're positive for something that they've had, Alison. It's a bit like, I don't know, if you were positive because you had the measles 30 years ago. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean you got the measles.
It's dead DNA. No, I get that. But I think the whole thing should be stopped. And then, anyway, it's all linked back. This whole moonshot thing.
I know.
That whole thing is all connected to Tony Blair. Mr. Tony Blair, who wanted to insert himself into governments around the world and dictate to everybody what their policies should be. So he's behind that. So I'd be very skeptical and very worried about anything that he has to say on anything, frankly. But I think more than anything, there's just no accountability for any of this. And in theory, Parliament are supposed to be sitting, but it doesn't seem to be working very well. So there's no accountability, and you've got no accountability from the media. Nobody's asking any questions. It's driving me nuts, David. I think we just need to gather an army
and march.
March on London, sort it out, and start again. I've reached that point now.
Well, Alison, you mentioned the media, and let's talk about the role of the media, because, again, we share a common view. The media disgust me beyond words, and I've been like that for a long, long time. I saw through them decades ago. But in this process, they are actually acting as a full-on propaganda front for whatever essentially the government wants to push out. So all I get on the media is cases, cases, cases. Nobody in the media asks any of the sensible questions that we've talked about. No one talks about.
They have done recently, because I cancelled my subscription to the Telegraph, because they were just doing my heads in every single day. It was just supporting the party line all the time. And then things started to turn a little bit, and I thought, okay, you found your corners. I will go back and I will pay you But I looked today and we're back to square one. We've got this whole thing. I'm looking at the front page now, and there's this whole thing about UK cases surging by 6,178.
Oh, yeah.
Then you've got survival skills, how to power through the 6-month crisis wall by an expert in disaster zones. And it just goes on. And I'm like, what the fucking hell is this? What fresh hell is this? This is the kind of thing, because if we don't win the public over and we don't start to reduce this fear, we are never going to get out of this. So I don't know where we go from here, but if the media have a massive role in all of this, but it seems to me that they are all owned by Bill Gates anyway. Now, I was quite skeptical about Bill Gates. The whole thing with Bill Gates, I was quite cool about it at the start. I didn't really want to dive down that rabbit hole and say, yeah, okay, he's this evil snake oil salesman. But quite frankly, he's not benign, and he's not this philanthropist that everybody seems to think he is.
Yeah.
And has his fingers in all the governments and all the policies and the media. And that became apparent. I think it was James Delingpole that brought that up the other day. I can't remember, somebody anyway. And that's really scary, actually, because it means that you can't get this message out to the public. I don't know whether or not Piers. I read somewhere on Twitter today. I had a busy day, but I did see bits of Twitter, and somebody said that Piers Morgan was coming round slightly. I don't know, but he's another massive influencer with public opinion.
Yeah.
And until that changes, we're not going to see a change in the polls, because if you look at the polls today, they were all saying, I think 50% of the public think we should be locked down harder. I just want to leave. I want to leave the country. If that's honestly the opinion, I am leaving the country, because I can't believe that.
I've seen those stats. I mean, I watch those when the media broadcast them, basically saying that whereas people like you and I suspect most of the people listening to this, Alison, are of an opinion that says this has gone on too long and it needs to be, dealt with in a different way. We need to learn to live with this, with COVID, basically, I think. But the media puts up these polls that instantly say, people are saying, no, we need greater restrictions. Please take away more of my freedoms. So, I mean, but again, I don't trust the media. So I don't trust those polls. I think, Alison, actually, my own experience based on talking to friends and families around me is that whereas a lot of people, probably unlike us, were prepared to give it a go for, let's say, 3 or 4 months. They actually believe Boris, more full end, but they did. I think there's an increasing dawning of realization with these people that. Do
you think?
Yeah, I do. Or I'm talking about ordinary.
I think people are prepared to snitch on their neighbours.
Well, they're certainly being encouraged to snitch on their neighbours. I mean, that seems.
There's a certain kind of person that will do that. But years ago, when I was at school and I learned all about the Stasi and the Nazis, it was really hard to understand the mindset that would lead somebody to dob the neighbours in so that they got arrested and sent to a concentration camp and ultimately died.
Yeah.
But that's been kind of. It's been there since we had the, clap for the NHS, where people actually, were making judgments on whether or not. I did not come out and clap the NHS. I hate the NHS and I hate anything to do with the medical profession. That's just a personal experience. I did not come out to clap them once. And people were making, in my neighbourhood, people were making comments about me. I couldn't give a shit, but that's a fact. So you've got the same kind of people who would now be prepared, and they were encouraged to do so by ministers last week, which is disgusting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, actually, Alison. It is the same people who will snitch and who, I mean, actually, I suspect that a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if you saw, but back again on my Twitter days, I got a visit to my house from a couple of police officers.
No way, really?
Yeah, they visited me, and my unspeakable crime was to go into the garden centre. I'd been in the garden centre buying a few plants, as you do, and I'd taken a snapshot of myself on my own. I wasn't around anyone else. But of course, I didn't have a mask on because because I'm exempt from wearing a mask, and I'm exempt because government regulations make it clear that people can be exempt. So, Alison, I put this post up about
That's appalling.
maybe about half one, quarter to two, 5 o'clock the same day, the same afternoon. There was a ring at the front gate. I let the people in, and it was two officers in to have a chat with me about this problematic tweet of mine. So I had to explain to the officers that I'm exempt, and if they the elder officer said to me, "Can I ask what your exemption is?" To which I replied, "If you understood the regulations, you'd know that was an inappropriate question to ask me." But nonetheless, I was kind of I was visited by the police. Because and you talk about the
I wish somebody would do that to me. I wish that would happen to me. Nothing like that exciting ever happens. I really want the police to turn up. I really do. Just so
well, I think the reason I tell you the little story, Alison, was I think what happened was I'd put a tweet out, and I think someone had sent my tweet to the police.
Oh, right.
And
okay.
the police instant response team to problematical tweets paid me a visit. I mean, the fact of the matter is that I'll go back to the same garden centre tomorrow without a mask. I have exemption. As I explained to the police officers, Alison, I would encourage everybody who's got exemption not to wear a mask. If you
I don't wear a mask when I go shopping, and I don't wear the exemption badge.
No, I don't wear the badge.
A couple of people have come over and said something, and like whatever. But I did this evening because I had this call with you. I did actually put on the mask of Zorro, whatever it's called. I put on a scarf around my face because I needed to get in there really quick, and I didn't need the aggravation. I just wanted one bottle of whiskey and a couple of other things and come out. And yeah, it's horrible having your face. I mean, that's the first time in ages I've ever done something like that, and it felt horrible.
It's absolutely awful.
It's a huge imposition to demand that somebody covers their face, and I can't believe the British public just take this at face value without asking any questions. I'm just really disappointed in my fellow Britons.
Well, the only time I've worn a mask is when I went into an Apple store to get an iPad repaired, and they insisted, so I needed to get it fixed. I went in. I only was in the store for maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And as you know, I wear glasses, and I found that my glasses were sort of misting up, and I found breathing was very difficult, and I was never so happy to get out of the store. And I've never worn a mask since, and I won't be wearing a mask. Simple as that. But I look at the elderly people, Alison. I'm sure you've seen them as well.
Yeah.
And they're walking around, they're shuffling around in their masks. And
terrorized, I might add. They've been terrorized by the media, and that's, they're like, they've got the last few years of their life, and they're being terrorized by something that really is not. I mean, it's a nasty virus, but it's not as, there's not every chance that you're going to die from something like that. So it's awful that they've been terrified into that situation. And I've seen that photo of that poor little old lady who was walking down the road and had the face mask on, and she passed out. I don't understand, and I don't understand why the media and other people aren't asking more questions, although I have seen a distinct correlation between people who are real mask fanatics and Remainers.
Yes, there is a distinct correlation, and I think they
just love it, don't they? They just love all that power trip stuff.
Well, they do. That's the reason they wanted to keep us in the European Union. They love the idea.
Exactly. They just want one menace for another.
Absolutely, yeah. It's fundamentally the same people, or there's a strong overlap between them. But what do you think of this legislation that says that the pubs and restaurants from, I think it's tomorrow night, have to close at 10 p.m.? What do you reckon to that? Where do you start on that one, Alison?
Well, okay. So yeah, COVID stops at 10. Did you not hear?
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah.
I haven't been to a pub because the pub down the road, I love my pub down the road. It was a lovely pub. It's got a beautiful fireplace. I used to go down there with my son. We'd sit there in front of the fireplace in the winter. I love it. but they've gone absolutely COVID crazy, which is really disappointing. They had this big, they've got gates and all sorts of stuff outside the front. They put portaloos in across the road. It's like, oh, fucking hell. And they've got these whole rules that they stick up on this blackboard, which are the 10 commandments about COVID. And I just thought, I'm not supporting you then. I'm not going down there. And I see the woman, who runs the pub, and she sits outside in a face mask every day doing her accounts and bits and pieces. But, I don't see how they're going to survive this. And actually, I was in the process of I'm trying to set up a business, which has been something I've wanted to do for a long time. And I was, when Boris said, stupidly, I trusted him when he said, we're not going to have another national lockdown. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to set up this cafe. And it was only today when I went to see a friend, and she was doing some designs and bits and pieces for me. And she said, oh, you're going to have to, because she knows I hate face masks. So she said, oh, you're going to have to wear a face mask. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And she kind of sympathetically said to me, well, why don't you wear a plastic face shield? And I'm like, are you for real? And I hadn't realised that this was one of these diktats that had come in last night, because I didn't watch Boris, basically, because I don't listen to anything he has to say. So I was, apart from the military, which just makes my blood run cold, if I'm honest. But and that, to me, I mean, you can look at everything, but to turn around and tell the British public that if you don't abide by the rules, we're going to get soldiers onto you, I can't believe this is the country I grew up in.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing, but we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a second, but just on the restaurants and pubs, excuse me, Alison.
That's horrible. And that's horrible. I mean, I went to Italy in the summer, and we had to go and get food from this buffet area, and we had to wear masks, and all the waiters thought it was hilarious, so you'd go and get your food, and then you sit down and you rip the mask off as soon as you sat down, and the whole restaurant is full of people, and none of them are wearing masks. They're just eating and drinking and living life.
And that's actually,
I don't know, are we following the same thing now? Are we saying that you can sit down, and I haven't looked at that regulation, so I don't know. I just know that I feel deeply uncomfortable with it.
So the regulation now, or at least from tomorrow night, is that if you go into a restaurant or a pub, you've got to wear a mask as you go in.
God, no.
When you're sitting down, you don't have to wear a mask, but if you have to get up to go to the loo,
oh my God,
then you've got to put a mask back on, and then when you're going out, you've got to put a mask on. And that's point one. Point two, which is ludicrous, because the bars and restaurants have to be closed. The building needs to be closed by 10 p.m. That means last orders is going to be about 9 p.m. I guess.
Okay, I hadn't thought of
that. And in restaurants, I know some people who own restaurants, Alison, and what it means for those folks is that they will only essentially be able to have one evening sitting. So you book a table for two at, say, 7:15 or whatever. So you leave by, you've got your 2-hour slot to get your a nice meal and a relaxed time, and then that's it. So that means that their revenue stream is going to be cut by 50% from Thursday, tomorrow night. That's going to cause economic problems as well. So, when Boris says we want to avoid the economic meltdown of a second lockdown, you're giving us an economic meltdown anyway, Boris.
So because we are a service-led economy.
Yeah, we are.
I don't really understand. I don't really understand Boris anymore. How disappointing is that?
Well, I mean, if you remember back in August, we were being encouraged to eat out, and I can't. What was the expression?
Eat out to help out.
Eat out to help out. Yes, and you get
to help fascism.
Yeah. But then this month, it's if you go out, it's going to cost you £10,000. So in all of this,
is this part of, David? You answer a question. Answer this question. Is it part of this great reset thing that everyone's talking about? Because I keep seeing this banded around, and I'm not quite sure what it is. I know that Boris is completely hooked into this bird that he's going out with. Is that his wife? I don't even know. the one he had a baby with anyway.
Yeah.
She's all into this green stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
is that what this great reset thing is? I mean, because people talk about this, but has he bought into this? What is all that about?
Well, I mean, the answer to that question from where I sit is, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, then it's a duck. And so when I look at all that's happening, Alison, it looks very much like we're moving to a society where cash is a thing of the past, where we are going to be completely controlled in terms of if we travel, how we travel, if we eat out, where we can drink, all of these things of parts of life.
Why though, David? Why?
Well,
I see all of these things that you're talking about, but I
Yeah.
don't understand why are we doing that?
Well, if you consider that for quite a while, people have been, or some people, and elitists have argued that the likes of the United Nations, for example, should really be driving the global agenda. And so that means that there are subsidiary organizations like the World Health Organization help enforce that narrative. All of the science officers in the UK, both here in Northern Ireland and in Westminster and Scotland as well, they take their health advice from the WHO. So the WHO are basically controlling the shots in terms of the actions that are being taken. So if you believe, as I have done for such a long time, that the World Health Organization is, well, it's a corrupt institution. The United Nations is very corrupt.
Yeah, and they're all part of the same thing.
And they're all part of the same thing. So, and that kind of explains why. I mean, we've talked about the UK, I guess, but pretty much the same stuff is happening, like in Ireland. It's happening around the world to different degrees. It's not the same. Sweden's a noteworthy example. Different.
But I did see this evening, rather worryingly, although it's gone off the front page now, but I did see something about the fact that Sweden were talking now about potentially having a lockdown of their own. But this was just more fear-mongering. Yeah, the science chief signals a shift towards a lockdown strategy in Sweden. I don't know if that's true.
No, I doubt that. I think Sweden's been a pain in the side of the the lockdown fanatics, Alison, and so they've wanted to do everything possible to make Sweden look bad. I mean,
but I think part of this is connected. Initially I thought there were two things, and somebody said this on Twitter the other day, which made me feel less like a lunatic for thinking this. Yeah. But I had this view. I took this view that part of this, especially with Antonio Fauci, that he was. This had a lot to do with Donald Trump being re-elected this year. If Obama had still been in charge, we would be looking at this in the same way that we were as swine flu. So I thought it was connected to that. And then I also got this horrible feeling that maybe it was also connected to decimating Brexit. So you got the two together. So you've got this idea that you could use the virus to undo Brexit by saying we all had to be part of this global concerted effort to try and reduce COVID and get on board and shared resources and all the rest of it. So there is that in the back of my mind that it might be that. But I don't know. I think if Donald Trump wins in November, I think COVID is over in America. But because of what Boris said yesterday, I don't see. I'm not sure quite how we climb out of this.
Well, that's why I say there's a comment here. I've just put it up on the screen. From Iron Duke says, this new lockdown, based on cases that are killing almost no one, is destroying the British economy, especially small business, and also destroying ancient British liberties. The very point you're making, Alison. I mean, I think if Trump wins in November, COVID will vanish as mysteriously as it arrived. I also think things like Black Lives Matter's riots will also vanish. Lots of things will change, and we actually have.
I'm not sure about that. Actually, I think they might go headlong into a full civil war over that.
Oh well, that might happen on the 4th of November. Yeah, but we do actually have on the stream, Alison, a character called the City Troll. The City Troll, you may remember from a long time ago on a Tangled Web.
Yeah.
he is one of my longtime allies, and he's very welcome here. And I
I
think,
used to drive him nuts on your website.
yeah,
I was your resident pet feminist. That was when I was a feminist. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, the thing is that definitely there are all these many kinds of links to it, but there's just so many casual, cruelties. For example, tonight I read that hospital visits here in Northern Ireland, if you want to visit someone in an NHS hospital from I think it's tomorrow, or whatever, it's going to be down to one visit per person per week. So how cruel is that? Somebody maybe, with serious conditions, cancer, coronary, I mean, there's loads of things
Well,
people
no, I mean, my best friend, her mum got sick just before this whole COVID thing took off, and she was in hospital, and she wasn't allowed to go and visit her mum, and her mother died 2 weeks later, and she was absolutely beside herself
Yeah.
because she wasn't allowed to go visit her mum, and she was kept away, and she's got this now lifelong impression in her head that her mum was in her
Mhm.
last few days had no idea what was going on, and was also she
Yeah.
couldn't say goodbye, and she's got to live with that. And there are millions of people who've got to go, or thousands of people who've got to go
Yeah.
through something similar, and there are lots of people who've also got serious diseases like cancer and heart disease who won't be able to get the kind of care that they need, and they go from a stage 2 to stage 3. There's
Yeah.
a huge amount of sacrificing, and I take huge umbrage with the Prime Minister saying it's your fault that we have to go into this semi-lockdown situation. It's because you didn't behave. When people have lost businesses, they've lost their healthcare, they've lost access to their hospitals and their family. That's a fucking outrageous thing to say. And that's what Boris said yesterday. I
Yeah.
knew he was going to say it, which is why I couldn't listen to him.
Yep.
But it's just appalling. People have made massive sacrifices for this 3 weeks to save the NHS.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. Yeah. I mean, but it's also both ends of the life cycle. Alison, I became a grandfather. Excuse me.
Sorry, I forgot to say congratulations.
Yeah, for the first time last month, and what was really, I think, pretty horrendous was my daughter had to go to NHS hospital. She wasn't allowed to bring her husband in with her. He had to stay and wait till she got to a certain point in the labour, and then at that point he was then allowed to come in, but he had to wear a mask. So my granddaughter was born, and the first thing she seen was a masked father, and I think this is evil. Actually, it's not just it's beyond cruel.
Yeah, and also she didn't have anybody to advocate for her. So if anything had gone wrong and she needed somebody, there was no one there.
Yeah.
Appalling.
Yeah, and you multiply that up by all the women in the UK at the moment who, be going in and giving birth, and they're all they're put in this horrible position. So from the beginning of life, from the birth point, right the way through to the final stages of life, Alison, the NHS is behaving so cruelly. And yet at the same time, we've been told clap for it. Well, I never clap for it, and I never would clap for it. But not only that, but even people with more minor ailments are basically being put on the long finger.
Yeah, well, everything's been parked because of COVID.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that matters. Nothing else seems to matter. And I think Matt Hancock more or less said that today.
Yeah, which is why when you look around the rest of even Europe, places like Germany, for example, appear to be more efficient because they don't treat their health service as a religion. We treat the NHS as a religion, and the unfortunate thing is we're dying because of it. So
this whole COVID thing has just made it even worse. It's just awful. We're never going to get out of that either.
Yeah, no, you see, that's the thing about this great reset. I don't think hospitals are ever going to go back to what we would, or even actually GP surgeries. I mean, or going to see a dentist. All these things that we all took for granted, that we assumed were part of the healthcare system in the UK, turn out to be entirely secondary to COVID. And yet, I read that again. Looking at the Scottish numbers, the Northern Irish numbers. There's 2 people, Alison, 2 people in Northern Ireland in intensive care. There's 6 people in total in hospital. 6 people.
I know. I don't think anyone's died in the southwest of England since the middle of July.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, round about the beginning of July, that's when deaths more or less petered out, which we would expect for a summer, for a respiratory disease. They all vanish in the summer. But what scares me, I don't know what you think about this, is that was the summer. Here we are, it's September. In fact, autumn and October are well on their way. And that's the season of people getting the cold. I've had the cold, people getting flus, coughs, sneezes. And I'm really scared.
I think all of those things fit under something called coronavirus. I might be wrong, but they stopped talking about COVID back in July and started talking about coronavirus. And I do worry that I'm not quite sure how these tests distinguish, and I have asked this question between any of like a common cold, but it comes back to the point I was trying to make earlier, is that people should just not get tested. Just stop it.
Yeah. You should only get tested if you feel that you have got the symptoms of COVID. And the thing is, like, for example, even this morning, I woke up to the news that a football manager, the West Ham football manager, Davy Moyes, and 2 players had tested positive for coronavirus and were self-isolating. But that begs the question, were they unwell? Had they any sickness? Or were they simply completely asymptomatic, which I believe is the case, but the test said that they were positive, therefore they're straight into isolation? Because if that's the case, Alison, this country is heading inexorably to a lockdown by the end of October.
I think we are, though. And interestingly, there was stuff that was circulated on the Facebook page months ago, which I took with a pinch of salt at the time. Thought, okay, I'm just going to ignore this because I can't handle it. But they were talking about the military having all leave cancelled, the police having all leave cancelled, and that there was definitely going to be a lockdown in October. I think we're building up to that.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, can I ask the people on the stream? You're listening to Alison and myself. I think Alison and I share the view that a lockdown it's absolutely inevitable, and I think it's going to come in October. What do you folks think? Do you agree with us? Do you see a lockdown, or do you believe Boris because he's doing his very best by this? Of course, they won't call it a lockdown, Alison. They're going to call it circuit breakers. Did you see that? Circuit breakers is the new term. Yeah, that's
the crap they come up with: bubble, circuit breaker, what else?
Cycle. It's just cycle
breaker. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. This is, but essentially, I think that's what's coming, and I think
it definitely is. I've already decided that that's what's happening, which is why I was trying to encourage everybody earlier on the Facebook page that we need to get this. We need to get our acts together, and there needs to be some. I've got to this point now. I'm sorry, but I'm sick of data. I'm sick of science. I'm sick of charts. I'm sick of hearing words. I just want action now. Like, what are we going to do to get rid of this absolute shambles of a government? How do we do this? Because I think, we are living through a medical tyranny now, and unless we get rid of them, and particularly as they're not listening, we're never going to get rid of any of this unless we actually do something. So I'd encourage people to start thinking along those lines.
Well, I think there's always a role for peaceful protest. I think that's something I would also, and I believe actually, Alison, this weekend, this Saturday, there are protests. I know there's a big protest.
Yeah, I went to the one last weekend.
Oh, did you? Yeah. What?
I was going to go to this one, but I don't know. I really think it's all going to kick off, and I'm not sure if I really fancy being in the middle of that.
Yeah.
That would be wrong. But last weekend was that was enough, I think. But I think that there are definitely there's enough people now, I think, who feel strongly enough, but we've got to make that strength of feeling known, especially as the media aren't doing jack shit, really.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I think there's a significant number of silent people, and actually, typically British people. Actually, Alison, they don't
Mm.
they don't necessarily vocalize much. Like, they don't. They're not on social media like me going on about stuff. They're much more quiet than that. But
Mm.
I think a significant percentage of them have caved away from following Boris. I really genuinely do think that, and I've reason to think that from people I talk to, and the people who would have
Yeah,
said,
I think there has been a gear change there.
yeah,
It does
yeah,
feel like it. I mean, and I do feel that might be true, but we've got to get a move on now, because we're going to head into this situation, and I think it's completely unacceptable to allow a British Prime Minister to stand up and say, blather on about liberties and then say, oh, but I'm going to use the military if you don't do as you are told. I mean,
mm,
if that's not
mm.
enough, I don't know what is really.
Well, this is what we've seen in New Zealand. We've seen,
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, we should have mentioned that earlier. Look at what's happening in Australia. Look at what
yeah,
is
yeah,
happening. And
yeah.
I'm not sure about the situation over there, but we are unarmed. So if the military do decide that they're going to take the side of the government, we're in deep shit.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think that for me, I think what you saw in Melbourne, in Victoria State in
It was
Australia.
awful.
Yeah, but I think there was a time, Alison. I said this on a stream a while back. I remember reading 1984, a long time when I was a young person, thinking it's a great book, really enjoyed it. But
Yeah, make it fiction again.
but yeah. But it turns out that, and I thought it could never happen, but it's happening in literally in front of our eyes. And when you see all the masked wearers, the zombies walking around, dobbing people in because maybe 7 of them gather in a garden rather than 6, you sort of think to yourself, yeah, we live in 1984. It's just that we call it 2020.
Yeah.
And the only way out of it that I can see is it's people. It's to do with us, to do with ordinary people. I don't expect politicians to get us out of this, because
Well, no, and this is where democracy kind of falls down, because in order to make any kind of change, we have to wait, unless there's some way of getting rid of. I'm not a constitutional expert, but we have to wait to vote. But I'm not that patient.
Well, of course, politicians do react to the public mood. They all do. I mean, there's going to be elections. Well, I was going to say there's going to be elections, council elections next year in England, but of course they might be cancelled. Yeah. Well, I think the difficulty we have is the political class at Westminster are all united, Alison. They all support what's happening as a
And
party.
they'll all toe the party line. They'll all toe
Yeah.
the party line. At the end of the day, they're more frightened of Boris and the cabinet than they are of us. And until that changes, nothing else will.
Well, I mean, Chris Davis says here the backbenchers can remove him. And actually, there is a thing today that's happened where Sir Graham Brady, the former chairman of the 1922 committee, has publicly expressed great concern at the fact that what we're witnessing is government by diktat.
Yeah.
In other words, his own government, like you mentioned Matt Hancock earlier, people like he and Boris, they're just basically shoving through regulations, and they're not going through Parliament. Parliament doesn't scrutinise. So, it's funny, Alison, we've actually moved this year into a kind of a post-parliamentary situation where the rules are made and Parliament doesn't get to doesn't get to talk about it. I suspect Parliament might endorse the same rules. They might not, but either which way, they don't get a chance. So we, the British people, are disenfranchised at Westminster because Hancock and Boris are running the scientists are running the show. And this is what annoys me about Whitty and Vance. Who elected them?
Well, this is it. It's a tyranny of experts, isn't it?
It is.
There's only one way to get rid of them, as far as I can tell.
Well, certainly, if things don't change, things are going to get much, much worse. And so on that uplifting note, he says.
Sorry, David.
On that note, I think we probably all need to go and have a whiskey, like Alison. And Alison,
now.
Yeah. Well, listen, can I thank you very much for taking the time, Alison? I know how busy you
It's
are.
a pleasure, and congratulations, by the way. Sorry, I forgot to say that at the start. Congratulations on the birth of your granddaughter.
Well, there are certainly better. I have better things to concern myself about than
Yeah,
being
definitely.
booted off Twitter. And the other thing is that I think, and I hope there's enough people like us, and hopefully those on the stream here, who've got a backbone, and we won't be submissive, and we won't comply, and we will think for ourselves, and we're not going to be put into a little pigeonhole, little masked zombies who jump to whatever tune Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock think. We're people of reason, and I think, Alison, we've tried to this evening explain rationales and exploring things, trying to base stuff on facts, not just speculation. But as I say, thank you for being here. I wanted to thank everybody who's joined us. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to be back with you soon. But it's good night from me.
Good night, David.
Yeah, good night, Alison. All right, everyone. Catch up with you soon. Cheers for now, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.